Hi and welcome back to PDA Dad UK. In this episode we're going to be looking at a new mini documentary that's been put on YouTube by Autism Speaks, and we're going to have a look at that and we're going to talk about it and the positives that are in there, but more overwhelmingly the negatives. So yeah, tune in, have a listen, and we'll explain why I have issues with this. So welcome back to PDA Dad UK. Before we go any further, can you just drop down, hit like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so that you know we've got new content coming up. There is lots of good stuff coming up. This week, a video appeared on YouTube from Autism Speaks. Now, Autism Speaks are a company I have, or a charity supposedly, I have a lot of issues with. I wouldn't have had them if I hadn't engaged with autistic people in my life and understood the damage they're doing. And this is a video that I've watched, and what you're going to see is my reaction as I watched it for the first time and watched it from start to finish, and my input and my comments as we go along. But I have a real issue with Autism Speaks, and that really plays out. I'm going to talk about that at the end. Start with, I find this really problematic. Constantly looking at the negatives of being a parent to someone with autism or any neurodiversity, but it's focusing on meltdowns straight away. So it's tugging at the heartstrings, and I have a problem with that. It can be really challenging being a parent to someone who has these challenges in their life. But I have a real issue with filming and putting meltdowns onto film like this. These kids are going to grow up. They're going to be autistic adults who are going to look back at this and going to feel awkward or ashamed or whatever it is that goes along with it. Now, there are some situations it's important to be able to just sort of reflect what's going on. And yes, meltdowns are a daily part of life for many parents of autistic kids. It's the focus on that that's my issue. It's starting out with that. It's not going into anything else, but we'll carry on.
Yeah! Hey, dance it. Dance it.
So right away there, you've got a child being dragged by its t-shirt, and that's just unnecessary. I have a problem with this kind of stuff, and it sort of reflects back to the Sia movie, Music, where you had a restraint, but it was shown in completely the wrong context, and for a reason a restraint wasn't required. Here again, you've got a kid crawling around there, dragging it by the t-shirt. That's not an appropriate way to go about things. For a start, it's not safe. I mean, t-shirts, goes around the neck, you can cause strangulation. There are safety issues that go along with that kind of stuff. There are appropriate ways you can be trained in. Even look online. There are tutorials on YouTube, if you go and look, that show safe methods of restraint. It's not the most recommended way to go, but it's got to be better than dragging a child by its t-shirt.
You can't really take a day off of autism. Autism never took a day off on me.
She needs constant attention. Can't be left alone for a minute.
He has never spoken a single word.
Everything about Daniel's life that seems normal for a typical kid, like going out to dinner or going to a park, all that for us is work. I didn't choose to do this. I'm not a therapist. I was drafted. I have an autistic child.
Everything I do is about autism.
I have to stay home with him because I have to facilitate the therapist, going here, going there, the medication, the constant medical appointments.
I really had to give up my entire life as I knew it.
Well, I left the job that I never intended to leave.
And I did have to quit my job.
Our entire social life revolves around autism, and all of our friends are parents of children with autism.
The parents of autistic children often stick together, and we have to.
Because they understand if your kid is having a meltdown and there's no judgment, it's just that's how it is.
You know, it's very hard to maintain friendships with people that have no idea, like, just how difficult your life is on a day-to-day basis.
They have no idea how easy it is compared to this. You know, your heart is breaking all day long. You know, you think about his future and all the pain he's in, and I don't think they can understand that.
And the parents who were going out for bagels together and are like, oh, do you want to come for a bagel? And I think, yes, in another life, I'd love to come for a bagel. But right now, I have to write down what he's doing so we can go home and work on that. And then I have to take the other two to therapy. So, no, I can't go for a bagel.
So here, they're talking about the difficulties and the challenges that it comes from being a parent to an autistic child. And it does resonate. There are times that I feel this way. And I want to be open-minded about this. And I think this is tapping into something that is a need for many parents. We do feel very isolated. I know it's something that, I experienced. My whole social landscape changed. My friends who were friends prior to having an autistic daughter have changed. They don't understand. Many of them are still there though. That's a point to make, is that, I can still tap into my old friendships quite happily, and I do maintain those friendships. There is a challenge that comes from, you don't get invited out places, you don't get taken to parties and stuff like that because your child is just too difficult to manage in that situation. It gets lumped in the too hard basket. Now that's not right. I'm not saying that for a second, and I think it's a real issue and something that more people could understand. You'd have a lot less people feeling so isolated, but certainly what you do find is that your friendship groups do become people who are like-minded, who are in the same position, because they do understand. I think that was something they tapped into there that's very true. Your child is different to a neurotypical child and has different challenges that are going to present themselves from time to time. And when you're dealing with someone who is in that position and they understand from their own experiences, it does make it a lot easier. And so I think you do find that your friendship circles start to become people who are part of the neurodiverse community on the basis of they're the people who get it and understand.
Danson ran out the door himself, which was absolutely terrifying. It was freezing cold, no shirt on and no shoes on.
Daniel had walked at the front door.
He got away from me and he was running down the middle of First Avenue.
See, and there I have where I have an issue with stuff like this is that we're not looking at the positives that are in there. Now, this video is made for a purpose, and I get that. Yes, there are challenges that are different that come from being a parent to somebody who's got a neurodivergence. But a lot of the same issues carry over to neurotypical children. It's been very interesting for me having a neurodiverse child and then having a neurotypical child, seeing that still we get some of the same issues, and you get other issues that come into play where you see copied behaviours. Well, if my sister can do this, why can't I? And yeah, these things are they're important messages, but this is very focused on the hardship. And for me personally, I find so much joy that comes out of being a parent to my daughter. And I found so much joy in coming to understand what autism is, what pathological demand avoidance is, what sensory processing disorder is, all these different facets to my daughter's neurodiversity, and being able to understand her better. And I found a real richness. And in coming into the SEN community, and you get people, they welcome you with open arms, and I find so many positives from that, and so much more that I've been able to do to help support my daughter and support my family as a result of that. And there's so many positives that come with that, and I don't find that to be a negative personally.
She took off once and we had to call the police.
I immediately called the police.
I was just running straight on into traffic.
Daniel wouldn't look at traffic.
Running, sprinting down to that traffic light.
He's gonna get hit by a car.
I really was sure that he would be struck by a car.
People were beeping.
My heart was racing.
I felt my life going in like slow motion.
Anything could have happened.
It's very scary. It's very, very scary.
I feel like I'm playing this game, which is life or death to me.
Now, this is a scary part of an experience that many parents to autistic kids and neurodivergent kids go through. And my daughter was a runner for quite some time, and it was terrifying. And I can relay a couple of times that my heart was in my head. She worked her way out of the house, and I turned around, she was gone. Looked around the house where she'd gone to, and then realised she was halfway up the road before I could do anything. And who knows what could have happened in that time had I not, or if I hadn't responded as quickly as I was able to. And she used to do that a lot, and she had no danger awareness. So she'd happily run out in a road. She had no concept of that she could get really hurt. One time she ran off, we were at a beach, and she ran off, and it was when I was far bigger and I wasn't very fit, and I had to chase after her, and she was just too fast. She ran miles off, and it was only that somebody managed to stop her coming the other way and brought her back to us. It could have ended so much worse. And you do go through that range of emotions. So this is tapping in to, I think, real life experiences at this point. It's tapping into stuff that people do experience. What I'm concerned with is it's playing on fears. And this is something that I have a problem with Autism Speaks on the basis that they play on fears. And they play on this desire for a lot of parents to have, I just want a neurotypical child. I don't want my child to have autism. I don't want my child to have any form of neurodiversity. I don't want all these things. I want my child to just be normal. And I use the inverted commas very specifically there. I feel this is tapping into that fear and discomfort and that desire for many parents that I want to fix this. I can cure this. And that's a big thing that goes along with Autism Speaks, is this desire to cure autism. It doesn't need to be cured. It can't be cured. And the methods they suggest, things like ABA therapies and stuff like that, repress those traits so deeply, and then they come out later in life in far worse ways. And if you're a proponent for ABA and you think it's a fine thing, talk to actually autistic people who've been through it, which I've been privileged to be able to do, and find out the damage it's done. Look online, look at the reviews from people who've been ABA therapists who've left after seeing the damage it does down the track. There'll be links in the description. But yeah, it's such an important thing, and I feel this is leading into that. That's my gut feeling at the moment. That's based on my experience of Autism Speaks and my opinions that I've formed on that over time. We'll see where it goes, but I feel it's going in that direction.
Can't you just keep your child quiet? No.
People have no idea what it's like to have a child with autism.
We're just judged more harshly and more constantly and expected to do things that no human being should be expected to do.
Why is she screaming?
Why is he hitting himself?
What are you doing to her? Why are you making her cry?
And I say, well, are you an expert in autism?
It's always heartbreaking. When Jody was on the swings and crying, the other moms were sort of looking and wondering why this 8.5-year-old girl was screaming and carrying on because she didn't want to get on a swing.
I would like people to second guess themselves when they look at me and they think that A, I can't control my kid, or B, I'm abusing my child because he's screaming. Have a little bit more understanding, a little bit more compassion, and show that to your children as well.
Again, this is stuff I agree with. How other people respond to us as parents when we have kids who have these additional challenges in their life. For my daughter, I frequently have to explain to other parents, I'm sorry, she's autistic, she has PDA, she has trouble regulating her emotions, and this is the way that she does that. That doesn't mean it's acceptable for her to hit your child, and I will be talking to her about that now. But I do find, once I've explained that, people tend to be a lot more accepting and completely understand, and they do take away that judgment. But that initial judgment, and we go through it, and it's just so frustrating. When that first judgment comes in, they see you, and I think I've told the story before. I was in a car park, and the kids in this car were running riot, and you could see the mother in the passenger seat, obviously waiting for her husband to come back or her partner to come back. And she was just struggling. She was trying her best. And there were people walking by and touching, and then one of the kids darted out of the car and actually ran in front of mine. Thankfully, I was parked. And in the end, I sort of just hopped out. I just said, let's get you back to your mum. Got him in the car, and I just said, you're doing really good. I have a child who's autistic, and I understand the difficulties and how much this can be a challenge. You're doing really good. And she burst into tears, but it was a happy tears at that point. She was really thankful that she wasn't just getting judged, and I think she thought I was going to come over and give her a lecture on how to raise children and all that kind of stuff. When people make those kind of efforts, and when people have come to me and said, look, I think you're doing a fantastic job, and it has happened a couple of times where the parents come to me afterwards and just said, look, seeing the way you interact with your daughter, it's really beautiful. really appreciate what you're doing. And it makes all the difference in the world. And you kind of walk out with a smile on your face like, yeah, I did something good there and got that there. So yeah, that's another side of it.
I'm an educator, and here I have a child that I have no idea how to teach. Okay, come on in your seat. This morning I wanted Danson to sit with me and do a puzzle. Put that in the puzzle. He could care less. When he feels like doing it, he will sit there and do that whole puzzle in 30 seconds, or he won't.
So this thing, making puzzles, there are things my daughter will engage in that she does love and enjoy, and there are certain things that she just won't. It's not so much of an issue with us. We don't have that complete lack of wanting to try, but it's certainly there. And when you bring it into the pathological demand avoidance side of things, that desire to just not do whatever you're being, asked of, the demand being presented, and that subconsciously triggering an avoidance, that's definitely something I have to deal with. But there's also a thing there of learning to pick your battles. So, it's a puzzle in the end, and there are other ways to do things. You don't have to be so rigid and set in desires that we must be doing this specific thing. I think one of the things that comes with parenting an autistic child over a period of time is that you learn to pick your battles, but to be flexible. And yeah, there are times that you've got to sort of knuckle down and say, I'm sorry, we have to do this now. During the lockdowns, when we had to get some schooling done and we had to get them to learn in a certain way and do certain things, that was something we had to do, but we had to work a way to make that manageable and work for us with our family. And we managed to do that, thankfully. There are ways around things. I think sometimes we just got to be more flexible.
But I remember that was a very scary moment for me when I realized I had sat in the car for about 15 minutes and actually contemplated putting Jody in the car and driving off the George Washington Bridge, and that would be preferable to having to put her in one of these schools. And it's only because of Lauren.
See, that's horrifying. We all have moments where we need help and we need to call out, and we can have some dark thoughts. And I'm not criticizing this woman for being in a situation where she was having those dark thoughts. But her daughter's going to have to watch this one day and know that that was the emotion that was put forward. What kind of guilt is that going to place on someone? How would I feel if that was me looking back at my parents doing a video 30, 40 years ago and knowing, I kind of did have to go through that. My stepmother wasn't very nurturing with me, and she was very vocal about the fact that she didn't care for me very much. And it hurts to this day. I still get nightmares about it. I occasionally wake up and I was just, something flashes back and I have to resolve that sadness and anger that's in me as a result of that. I appreciate the honesty of where this woman's at, and I think, she clearly needed help and support at that point. But I do get concerned about this stuff being put out on, at some point her kids going, and other autistic people are going to watch this and worry, is this something I put my parents through? I don't ever want my daughter to feel that. Anything I do, I want my daughter to be able to look back and understand that everything I did was because I love her. I love her from the bottom of my heart, and I will do everything I can to support her. And I will work with the challenges, and I'll be honest about the frustrations, but not to the point that she needs to feel guilt about that. I really worry about this kind of stuff being put in.
Matthias was 4 months old when Christian was diagnosed. It just took a lot of the naturalness, the joy of having a baby out of the equation, because we were always filled with fear. Bye. Bye. Bye.
And I have Lauren, whose babyhood I missed because she was 2 months old when Jody was diagnosed.
I see Pooh Bear's house. What do you see, Jody?
And so the first 2 years of Lauren's life are a complete blur.
He wants to fix Christian, and he makes a big show about examining people.
I don't want anybody to make fun of her.
It's sad. I forget sometimes that he lost Christian too.
I wish I had a sister without autism.
See, that guts me. I hate hearing that. Losing it's just so inaccurate. Okay, I have a neurotypical son who is 5 years younger than my daughter. And my daughter takes up a lot of focus, a lot of the time, because we're having to deal with behaviours. And interestingly, I had a conversation with my son the other day where he specifically talked about, he actually asked me, do you think life is hard, easy, or medium? And I said, well, it depends on the day and it depends on the time and what we're going through. Sometimes life's a breeze. Other times life can be really challenging. And he said, I mean, he's not even 6 yet, he's 6 next week. And he was saying to me, but I feel like Sienna's autism, I feel like my sister's autism makes my life hard. And we talked about it a bit. And I said, it's not something she's picked. It's something she can't help. And it's not something that she was born with it. And his response was, oh, so she was born with being autistic? And I said, well, yes. And his response then was, well, so she was born knowing every swear word? Because that's how he associates, is the language that comes along from my daughter, which she's learned some very fruity language over time. And he was associating those together. And there's a part of me that thinks, wouldn't it be so much nicer if he didn't have to deal with the stuff? But I will say this, my son's a remarkably accepting and loving kid. And he will accept anybody. And it's because he's had to grow up seeing the challenges that my daughter has. And he's had to adapt, and it's made him a better and more rounded human being. And what we don't do is allow for any moment him to feel that he's less important. And it can be a challenge. And there are times that we have to focus on my daughter because that's the important part. We have to be able to, deal with the situation as it's presented. But we make a point to make sure he knows how valued he is. And I really struggle with this. And for that kid to then come out saying, I wish, I wish I had a sibling without autism, it makes me really sad. And I think that's probably a natural thing to think at times, but I think there's a way to come out and say these things and then we can back it up. Well, in some ways life would be easier, but there's so much my daughter brings to our lives that's just a complete misrepresentation. It makes me really angry to hear that.
When you have a child with autism, I think the rate for divorce is like 80%.
Having a child who needs what Danson needs made it really difficult for me to balance my life and be a mother and have a job and be a wife. I didn't give that marriage what I could have because I had nothing left to give.
We never have any time to be together. It's always one of us with Jody.
It was just an angry time where I think both felt so helpless and did not know what to do and really sort of turned on each other.
When I hear that about divorce rates, it makes me really sad. And that's not to judge anybody and your situation and what you go through, but we made a really conscious decision that we would have to work harder with each other as a husband and wife in order to get through the challenges that we faced. And there were times it was dire, but we made that choice. Now, I'm not judging anybody who hasn't been able to make that choice. But again, someone's child's going to look back at that and say, so I caused my parents to split up.
I have to live forever. Nothing can happen to me.
I can never die.
I don't think there's a day that doesn't go by where I don't think about, oh, what happens when I'm not here? Who's going to take care of Daniel?
I'm panicking because I didn't write an updated list of what to do in case something happens to me. I've got to write who's in charge of his program, what doctors he goes to, what vitamins and supplements he needs, and what the plan is, because it's all up to me.
See, again, I find this tapping into those emotions that we all have, and it is very real. What happens if I'm out of the picture? If something were to happen to me, my family's in real stress, real dire straits. There's nothing that, it's a real fear, and this is tapping into that fear of what's coming, what's next for our kids, what happens when I'm not around, how are they going to be afterwards. I think the best way I can describe this, I feel very emotionally manipulated, but it's also a very real part of being a parent to an autistic child, or to, I think it could be a part of being a parent to any child. Who doesn't worry about what's going to happen if I'm not here for my kids? I think that's a very natural part. It's amplified. I think it's strongly amplified when you have to experience it as a parent, as a send parent, as a, when your kids have these extra challenges. But for me, I think it's a part of parenting in general.
You first get diagnosed and you say to yourself, I'm going to do a year of really hard work and he's going to be fine, he's going to be better. And then the year comes by and you're like, okay, maybe like 2 years, and then maybe like 3 years. And then you realize, okay, so basically this is lifelong.
I'm really surprised to hear that. And I'm actually encouraged to hear that. This is lifelong. And the support that we need to give our kids, no matter what their diversity is, what their neurotype is lifelong. That's the commitment you make as a parent. But I this is lifelong. And I was surprised to hear that in this, and I'm actually really impressed to hear that.
I imagined Little League and trips and vacations and girlfriends, and it's taken me a very long time to let those dreams go.
Christian's a human being who's fighting so hard like you can't believe. And what's been taken from him is it's indescribable.
Jackson is never going to get married and never going to have kids. When I'm at somebody else's wedding and they're dancing with their mother, what I would do to dance with Jackson.
See, I have a real problem with this too. This is really welling up some emotions in me. What's been taken? And I think we all go through that feeling sometimes as a parent. I certainly went through it. What things is my daughter not going to be able to experience that other kids are? It taps into that fear, it taps into that emotion. But again, with time and with seeing, my daughter's got so many more opportunities that open up as a result of this as well. And I think we forget how much of the world has changed because of autistic people. The Elon Musks of the world, the Teslas of the world, the Albert Einsteins, the Jerry Seinfelds, the brilliant comedians. These people are there in the world and they've made such a difference to people's lives purely because they see the world in a different way. I don't think something gets taken away without something else being given back. And I do really believe that. And you get stuck in, I think you go through a mourning cycle. I spoke about it in the video I did for the PDA summit where, I basically went through the stages of grief, and I realized that afterwards. But the point is that you come to that point of acceptance. Once you reach that point of acceptance, it opens up another door to opportunity and to this whole new amazing world that is there and ready to be tapped into. And I think that's really important to remember.
He is trying so hard to stay in himself, and I'm trying so hard to pull him out all the time. Look up, let me see your face. Okay.
I think that they have this misconception that all our kids are just mentally retarded and that's it, and what can you do, what can be done, and we want to change that.
I know that science is making great breakthroughs, and my hope is that by the time Lauren's ready to have a baby, we'll have a cure or we'll understand how to prevent autism.
I'm never going to say, I quit. It's not really my vocabulary. I assume it's not in a lot of autistic parents' vocabulary.
I just cannot accept we have to throw away this generation of children. No way.
If you don't think positively, you won't make it through the day.
Danson is my greatest teacher, and I know that, and he teaches me something every single day.
When I see him do something that we've worked so hard on and he's worked so hard on, it gives me hope that he'll get there. It's just going to take a long time.
He's very, very loving to me.
Say, I love you, Mommy.
I love you, Mommy.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
And there we have it. There we have the Autism Speaks mantra. I want a cure. I want, a prevention for autism. This isn't something that needs to be cured. It's not something that should be cured. Autism is just a different way of approaching the world. What needs to change is the attitudes that go around it and the attitudes from other people. I'm sorry, this is really riling me up. You can't cure autism, and it doesn't need to be cured. What you need to do is understand autism, understand autistic people, and start making the world adjusted to accept them and to accommodate them and to make them a valued part of society. Not to say that you are a disease that needs to be eradicated. It's so wrong, and it is exactly why I really, really hate Autism Speaks on this basis. I hate that that's the point. That's their goal. There's no... I'm lost for words. It makes me so angry. So that was my reaction as I watched the video from Autism Speaks. And I think at the end there, you could clearly see where my emotions were going with it. I despise this perception that we need or should have or can have a cure for autism. It doesn't need to be cured. It doesn't need to be, eradicated. I always go back to the first X-Men film. Now, I loved this film. And what I really liked was that, to me, it's the perfect metaphor for kind of where we're at with, autism acceptance in the world. There are these people that we don't quite understand, and it poses this unspoken threat almost. And it might be a threat to our lifestyle. Maybe we need to put in more effort as parents and stuff like that. And, there are times it's really, really hard to, be a parent to an autistic child. There are times when I've got my daughter in a restraint to stop her from hurting other people, my soul dies inside. I've talked about it before, and I'll mention it again, I'm sure many times. It crushes me because I know she hates it. What I will never do is interfere with her when it's just something she's doing that doesn't matter. If she's stimming, she plays with her hair, she does stim, we talked about it in previous episodes. If she's stimming, I'm not going to stop her doing that. That's just her way of regulation. For me, I listen to music. I actually do stim. I shake my foot. I've talked about it before. My wife hates it. But it's just me. That's just something I do. It's a more socially acceptable stim. Nobody really pays attention to it other than, can you stop doing that? And, oh, sorry, and I'll stop. It's completely subconscious. But I stim. I need to do that kind of stuff. That's something that I have to go through. My daughter has to stim. She needs that. She needs that self-regulation. And if that stimming is going to help her not reach that peak in her anxiety that she's going to melt down, then I say, giddy up, go ahead, stim as much as you like, because it's helping you. And I don't care if other people don't understand it. That's something she needs. There's this perception, and it really displays in that video, that this is just a burden. And it's not just a burden. There is so much joy that my daughter brings me. There is so much love that my daughter brings me. And I wouldn't change her for the world. What I would do is try and address some of the negatives that do come along with it. She lives with high anxiety. And if there's a way that I can help her manage that anxiety and not feel that anxiety as much, I would do it. But not at the risk of changing who she is at heart, because she's a beautiful, caring and loving kid. The world wants autism to be cured in a way, the neurotypical world. And this is where I've spoken about this before. There's this divide between neurotypical and neurodiverse people. And it comes from things like this. It comes from this feeling that I'm not welcome in this world. And so all neurotypicals get lumped in the one basket in the same way that we do to the neurodiverse people. So all lumped in one basket, too difficult to deal with, off you go. What needs to change is simply an attitude in the world that says that we are rating people on their value in this world. There is so much value to be brought from autistic people. And we, like I said in that thing, we wouldn't have so many of the amazing people we have in the world and so many of the amazing breakthroughs that we've had in this world without autistic people. And, you know, for me, as a neurotypical person, to anyone who is neurodiverse and watching this, I'm with you. And I want to be the maker of that bridge, if you like, or I want to be somebody who's helping to make that bridge. And, you know, let's meet halfway on it, and let's shake hands, and let's work out how we can make this a better world for everybody. This is why people hate the autistic people hate the puzzle piece. It's why people hate Autism Speaks. That's the message that's being spoken. This needs to be cured. This needs to be reduced. It needs to be controlled. And that's wrong. And going back to this X-Men example, you had this whole thing, and when you watch the film, you're on the side of the mutants. You're there like, you know, they're just, you know, there's this fantastic scene in there. I've used it before in a video, and you know, the mutants are talking to this new mutant's parents and saying, you know, hey, he's a mutant, he's got this power. And the mother's there going, well, can't you just not be a mutant?
Have you tried not being a mutant?
Of course you can't, you know, it's who you are. Autistic people, that's who they are. This is why identity first language is so important for a lot of autistic people. Autism is who they are. It is how they identify. And it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And it doesn't need to be stomped out. This video makes me so angry because it is purveying this misinformation that life as a parent to an autistic child, as a SEND parent, is just full of hardship. Yes, it's hard. I'll testify firsthand. It is damn hard. And there are times where I feel like giving up and throwing in the towel. But I know that my parents went through the same with me. When I was a kid, I'm neurotypical, but I had issues. And there are times they were just like, oh, this is going to blow my head in a minute and I can't deal with it. You know, this isn't, it's not something exclusive to the realm of SEND parenting. It is amplified when you're a SEND parent. And it is amplified. And there are days where I just want to pack up and move to Mars and, you know. But that's not every day. And I wouldn't trade those days for the days that are amazing with my daughter for the world. You know, those days, they make it all better. And I was happy to see at the end of that video that sort of, you know, I love you. I'll take that. That's what they should be focusing on, and that's what Autism Speaks should be focusing on, not on eradicating the disease of autism, because it's not a disease. What they should be focused on is making autistic people feel supported and bringing them into a world that is accepting and understanding and empowering to autistic people. That's all I'm going to say on it. I think my standpoint's pretty clear. I'd love to hear your comments. What did that video incite in you, and what emotions did it bring out? Please do put it in the comments. Please do like this, do subscribe, and hit the bell so that you know I've got new content coming up. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. In the meantime, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.